Okay, let's unpack this. We've got a really fascinating source document today. It shows a pretty new way the U.S. government is applying foreign policy pressure.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to send ripples through global supply chains. We're looking at Presidential Executive Order 14245.
Right, published in the Federal Register back in March 2025.
And for us today, the task is really to navigate this complex legal and economic thing. It's not just, another sanctions renewal.
No, not at all. The core mechanism is quite something.
It really is. The U.S. is talking about imposing potentially huge tariffs, but not directly on Venezuela.
Exactly, but on any third-party country that decides to buy Venezuelan oil.
Which is a major shift.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to break down this approach. Why the government thinks this is justified, how this new tariff mechanism actually works.
And what the real-world risk is for businesses, for anyone relying on global trade, really.
It's basically the U.S. using trade policy almost like a diplomatic weapon, directly.
And to understand how they can even do this legally, we need to look at the authority they're using. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Which is?
It's justified under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA. That's the big one.
Ah, IEEPA.
Oh,
okay. So that's the act that gives the president these broad economic powers during a national emergency.
Precisely. When a national emergency is declared, IEEPA kicks in.
But what's really crucial here, and kind of interesting, is that this specific emergency, it's not new, is it?
No, not at all. It actually relies on the national emergency first declared way back in 2015.
2015, so ages ago in geopolitical terms.
Right, and the administration stating that this situation still poses an unusual and extraordinary threat to the U.S.
But they must have needed something new, some fresh justification for this specific escalation, right? For EO 14245 itself.
Exactly, and that's the pivot point in the document. They lay out two main pillars, basically, that they argue justify taking this big step against other countries.
Okay, pillar one.
Pillar one is, let's say, the more traditional foreign policy concern. It talks about the Maduro regime's actions, undermining democratic institutions, corruption, the economic mismanagement.
The stuff we've heard cited for years regarding Venezuela.
Correct. But they explicitly link that internal situation to a wider regional crisis.
How so?
The source points to the deep humanitarian crisis, the public health issues, leading to millions of Venezuelans being forced to migrate.
Which causes regional instability. Okay, that makes sense as a justification point. Sets the stage.
But it's the second pillar where things get really specific and shift towards direct U.S. security concerns.
Which is?
The order focuses intensely on the threat from the Tren de Aragua gang.
Ah, okay, so a transnational criminal organization. That's the key difference here.
That seems to be the crucial new element driving this specific order, yes. It frames the gang as a direct security threat.
Wait a minute. So they're justifying a global trade measure based on the actions of a specific criminal gang. That feels like a big legal jump.
It is. And the EO backs it up by formally designating Tren de Aragua as both a foreign terrorist organization, an FTO, and a specially designated global terrorist.
Wow, okay, so they're pulling out the heavy labels usually reserved for like state actors or major international terror groups.
They are. The order cites the gang's involvement in really serious stuff: kidnapping, violent attacks, even the assassination of a Venezuelan opposition figure. Using these classifications lets the government use security laws in a new context.
And the EO then connects this gang threat directly back to the Maduro regime and U.S. domestic issues.
Yes, it makes a very specific claim. It states that the Maduro regime actually aided the influx of Tren de Aragua members into the United States during the previous administration.
Okay, now that's a significant assertion.
It is, and just to be clear for our listeners, we're reporting what the executive order claims and uses as justification. The EO presents this finding that the regime helped these gang members enter the U.S., worsening the immigration situation and allowing them to operate here as a foundational reason for the order.
Right. It's the official justification cited in the source for the economic actions that follow.
Exactly. It's the legal linchpin they're using.
Okay, so we've got the why, this blend of ongoing political instability in Venezuela, regional impact, and this newly emphasized direct threat from a specific gang designated as terrorist. Now, the how. What does this actually mean for global trade, for a company, say, in Asia or Europe?
This is where that secondary sanction idea comes in, or maybe better termed, a secondary tariff.
Right.
Starting April 2nd, 2025, the EO introduces this new risk, a discretionary And that word discretionary is important. 25% tariff.
Okay, 25%. On what?
On all goods imported into the U.S. from any country that imports Venezuelan oil.
Any country. Okay, let's make that concrete for someone listening. Say you run a business, maybe making car parts, in country X. You've always sold to the U.S. market. Now, if your country's national oil company or even a private refiner buys Venezuelan crude...
Doesn't even have to be your company directly involved.
Right. Suddenly all your tar parts, maybe electronics, country X, exports, textiles, everything, could get hit with an extra 25% tax at the U.S. border.
That's the mechanism, yes. And it's crucial to note that extra part.
Meaning?
This 25% tariff is explicitly supplemental. It stacks on top of any existing duties or tariffs already in place.
Whoa. So if country X already had, say, a 5% tariff on certain goods,
that could jump to 30% overnight.
That's potentially crippling for businesses. That could wipe out margins, make entire product lines unviable.
It's clearly designed to be a powerful deterrent, to force trading partners to choose very carefully. The risk to their entire export relationship with the U.S. is potentially massive.
So who gets to pull this trigger? Who decides if country X gets hit with this 25% penalty?
That authority is given to the Secretary of State.
The Secretary of State. Interesting. Not Treasury or Commerce primarily.
State has the authority to impose it in consultation with Treasury, Commerce, Homeland Security, and the U.S. Trade Representative.
That tells you something, doesn't it? Putting it under the Secretary of State suggests it's viewed mainly as a diplomatic tool, a foreign policy lever.
I think that's a very fair reading. It implies the decision might be tied more to diplomatic pressure and political goals than just, tracking oil shipments.
And it's not necessarily permanent once imposed, right? There's an off-ramp.
Correct. It's designed as leverage. The tariff automatically expires 1 year after the country last imported Venezuelan oil.
So they have to demonstrate cessation.
Yes. Or it could end even earlier if the Secretary of Commerce decides it should, again, using their discretion.
Lots of discretion built in.
A huge amount, which keeps the pressure on the targeted country. They need to actively prove they've cut ties to get back into good standing.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty for businesses trying to navigate this. Enforcement. How do they define Venezuelan oil? And how are they tracking these indirect purchases? That seems like the tricky part.
Well, Section 5 tries to cover that. Venezuelan oil is defined pretty broadly. It's crude oil, petroleum products, anything extracted, refined, or exported from Venezuela. Doesn't matter whose company is doing it.
Okay, so setting up a subsidiary in another country won't work easily. But what about indirectly? If oil changes hands multiple times?
That's the key phrase, isn't it? Indirectly includes purchases through intermediaries, third countries, basically anywhere the origin can reasonably be traced back to Venezuela.
Reasonably traced? By whom?
As determined by the Secretary of Commerce.
So again, massive discretion. It doesn't spell out the tracing methodology.
No, the document doesn't give specific criteria. It basically grants Commerce significant investigative power to make that call. It's subjective.
And that uncertainty is probably part of the strategy, right? If you're a trading partner, you don't want to risk the U.S. government deciding they can reasonably trace your oil purchase. The potential penalty is just too high.
Absolutely. The ambiguity itself acts as a deterrent.
Now, the EO must anticipate ways countries or companies might try to get around this, right?
Yeah.
Like transshipment.
It does. It anticipates that companies might try to reroute goods through other places to hide the origin or avoid the tariff if their country is targeted.
And how does the EO address that?
There's a very specific measure aimed squarely at Asia, particularly China.
What does it say?
It mandates that if the Secretary of State imposes the 25% tariff on China,
Okay.
then that same tariff must automatically also apply to goods coming from the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and Macau Special Administrative Region.
Closing the potential loophole. So Chinese goods can't just be quickly rerouted through Hong Kong or Macau to dodge the tariff if it's applied to the mainland.
Exactly. It's explicitly stated as a measure to reduce the risk of transshipment and evasion through those specific territories.
And this isn't just a set it and forget it policy, is it? There's oversight.
Right. Section 4 requires regular check-ins. The Secretaries of State and Commerce have to report back to the President every 180 days on how effective the tariffs are and on the ongoing situation with the Maduro regime. So it's built for continuous monitoring and potentially adjustment.
Okay, so we started with this one document, EJO 14245, and digging in, we found this really clear line drawn between national security concerns, specifically citing the Tren de Aragua threat, And this novel economic tool, the 25% indirect tariff.
Yeah, this document is quite revealing. It shows the government using that broad IEP authority to forge a really potent discretionary trade weapon. And crucially, it targets third-party commercial deals.
Which radically changes the game. It forces other countries into a difficult choice, their trade relationship with the U.S. versus potentially their energy needs or existing deals involving Venezuelan oil.
The risk calculation for major economies, for global companies, it's just shifted significantly.
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is seeing the Secretary of State, traditionally a diplomatic role, handed this economic hammer a potential 25% extra tax on trading partners.
Yeah.
It makes foreign policy disputes an immediate, possibly existential business risk.
It really highlights a trend, doesn't it? How national security threats, whether it's a criminal gang, political instability somewhere else, are increasingly being fought not just with troops or diplomacy, but with tariffs. High percentage, targeted tariffs aimed at the partners of the country the U.S. has an issue with.
Precisely.
Which leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? What's the long-term effect on global trade stability when trade rules, like tariffs, become such go-to tools for foreign policy?
Yeah, when the price of buying oil from one country suddenly depends entirely on your diplomatic relationship with another country.
Yeah.
How does that reshape global commerce?
Could we see major economic realignments driven just by the fear of getting hit with these kinds of trade penalties? Something to definitely keep watching.